Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. Hello. Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I'm super excited to have on the king of sports collectibles today, Brandon Steiner, who originally founded Steiner Associates, which later became Steiner Sports. And, you know, if you don't know Steiner Sports, then you've been living under a rock. If you are into sports memorabilia, then you're going to love this show. I know I am. And I wanted to share this with you, Brandon, is I have a Mickey Mantle and Yoga Bear card that I found in my grandparents' basement from my dad's collection growing up. So I still have that. And I have a Muhammad Ali signed boxing glove, a Mike Tyson boxing glove. But I also have, and I just bought, which completed this, I have Michael Jordan's high school signed jersey, college North Carolina jersey, and a Chicago Bulls jersey, which I thought maybe you'd appreciate. Michael Jordan was, a big, inspiration, growing up. And I could never afford a pair of Michael Jordan shoes growing up. And my mom definitely couldn't. I never wore them. So now I have all three of his jerseys, and it makes me feel proud. But thank you for being on today. You've built an amazing business and your story is remarkable. And I don't think, a lot of people know your story. So I'm happy to really, talk about that today.
Well, what's amazing is, I built Steiner. It's so hard to talk about Steiner, but I'm not with Steiner anymore. It was a great company, but I had a different idea after 30 years. Part of it was disrupting what I built after 30 years, which is in part an industry, but definitely a business that I started with $4,000 and turned to a $50 million business. And what's interesting is that, I started this new company, Collectible Exchange, with the same mindset. Maybe believe I was 21, maybe believe I was broke. I always say, wake up broke. There's nothing like hunger.
Yes.
And I try to. It's hard because I've made a lot of money, so I have to play this little game with myself. But I try to wake up broke. And regarding your collectibles, by the way, I mean that Jordans are the creme de la creme. The trading card business is a little bit weird these days. You got to grade the stuff, and your Muhammad Ali is losing traction as we speak because you got to probably be over 60 years old to appreciate Muhammad. And the height of his collectability is behind him. I had Muhammad for 5 years, so it was one of my favorite parts of. I actually did his collectibles for 5 years. Had an opportunity to work with Mickey Mantle and beat Michael Jordan 1-on-1 at his camp, not 1-on-1, but 4-on-4 in his camp, and send him to the sidelines, which is not easy to do. And I got my own Michael Jordan experience, and those three jerseys are the creme de la creme. For all those of you that out there that are collecting, one of the things I do with my new company is I built a site that you can buy and sell. So as opposed to pushing all the collectibles that I was creating at Steiner, Collectible Exchange now allows you to buy and sell in a really safe, validated place where I hope you get your stuff graded and authenticated. You can auction your stuff or you can just sell it. And I just feel like there's so many collectibles, having put out maybe 30, 40 million collectibles into the marketplace. I was like, man, I'm going to the sales book Hall of Fame. I'm going to sell all that stuff twice. That's my goal.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great.
And you know what? The truth of the matter is you're, not to sound like a little kid, but like my son changes his favorite player every other day.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
now you got all this stuff when he was a fan of this guy, that guy, but you can go on my site in a really nice, classy way. And you go in just like eBay, but it's a very, very cool site. I think it's 150,000 items on there now.
Oh, wow.
So you can really go on there very simply, put something on, or you can buy something. And the transactions are really easy. And my goal is to get to 1 million.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's interesting. I started this when I was 60, but you probably would know this. Like the highest level of entrepreneurism, like people think it's kids, but the highest level of entrepreneurs is between 55 and 65. So I felt like I was adding to that stat, which most people wouldn't think of it. But, you have the experience, you may have a little bit of money, but it's the mindset, whether you can click in, if you get the mindset, again, like I was saying earlier, like, can you get that little kid mindset where you're enthusiastic, curious? What's crazy? Like people say, one of the key things to entrepreneurship is don't be afraid, don't be afraid to fail. I'm like, really? I'm afraid to fail. Like, who's not afraid to fail? I think what you really want to say is don't be afraid to try.
Yes.
Like, I think that's a better. I hate when people say, don't be afraid to fail. I'm like, I'm afraid. I'm still afraid. As much success as I've had, made millions of dollars, I'm trying things and I'm afraid. And it drives me. But I'm not afraid to try. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to be curious. And I think trying is a really powerful thing as opposed to feeling like you got to get all in, because sometimes trying things will lead you to the all in concept. And that's where it's been for me. I've been in 80 directions here, man. I have no freaking idea. I'm not a tech guy. Now I'm a tech guy. We got a big tech thing going on, new authentication. I have these kids running circles around me because I know some of the stuff I don't know. But we're doing stuff completely different than what I did for 30 years, completely upside down. And I love it. I go home. My wife says, "What'd you do today?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea. I'm trying to figure it out, but it's looking pretty good."
That's
and
right.
That's the stuff that keeps you alive, and that's what keeps you kicking.
Well, I think you said like three really key things and that are really important with just being successful in life and especially in business as an entrepreneur. I mean, your mindset's everything, but staying hungry and staying curious. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, entrepreneurs I meet with such an ego, and I feel like just miss out on so much opportunity because they have too much ego to stay curious.
I missed so much opportunity, because I was feeling at Steiner. I was running it, building a kingdom, had over 70 players under contract. And meanwhile, bigger and better opportunities just passing right by.
Yeah.
And since I got kind of humbled and being forced out of my old company, which I had a great run, I could have retired. But, it's like now I'm like, I don't know what happened. I feel like I got my eyesight back. I'm just grounded. I'm a lot more humble about everything. And I'll give you an example. Like, it's 5:00 during the middle of Black Lives Matters and the COVID. I call my wife up and say, I'm going to be home for dinner. What? Where you going? I said, I got to run into the city. There was a lady that ordered this really cool memorabilia piece. It was in my warehouse, and I realized that it got shipped. So I'm like, I'm bringing it into the city. Now, if you remember, in that time, there were riots. The police were blocking everything. I'm like, I put it in my car, bring it. I can't have this lady. The guy's 50th birthday. And I put the thing in my car.
Wow.
And I drive it there. The lady comes down. I can't believe that I'm bringing it to her. I said, look, I wanted you to have this, and UPS forgot to pick it up. And you got to have that kind of humility.
Wow.
And be grounded on that level. And that's the stuff I did when I started Steiner. And then you get bigger. You got all these employees, and you stop. It's so hard to get to the little things. And one of the things I promised myself is that I'm going to continue doing the little things, but that's the stuff that's fun. I go pick up the players sometimes. I never picked up the players. Half the time the players would come up, I wouldn't even say hello to them. I was so busy. And now I'm back, and then every time I'm with a player and I'm driving somewhere with them, which is cool, but I get 50 more ideas what to do with them. And I miss that entrepreneurism. So sometimes like the best ideas is not always thinking about the next big thing, but just going back and doing the small things. And I think that sometimes you forget about those small things, and don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and execute yourself, man. There's nothing like it.
100%. And I think that's where some of the best stuff comes from. It also keeps you relevant and keeps you in tune with what's going on. And it's funny. I was just talking about this with somebody, and I think too, like, it's like a series of small things equal big things and big change. So sometimes you get to these points too, where there's not going to really be one big thing that you're going to do that's going to really make a difference. It's like all those little things that will make the big difference. And
I tell people all the time, like, you're trying to make things happen. You think about, trying to one day make it big, but remember, you only got to make one big sale. That's you can do a lot of things, but only one big sale will change your entire life. I've been fortunate. I've made a few. So, I'm definitely not going to stop at one big one, but I could have. But remember, one big sale, which may be a million things. You know, you talk about the splitting of the tree 100 times, and on the 101st, the tree splits. Was it one of the 100 times, or was it the 101st? I don't know. There's that old story, that old adage, but it's true. Like, I don't know all the little things that I do in a day. There's a million of them. What's going to lead me to that one big score? But if you stop doing those million little things, you put yourself at a lot more risk of not getting to that one big thing, I think. And you're missing the fun of it. You're missing the fun of it. And that's the process that, when you really dig into the process, that's really where the fun is.
Yeah, man. And I love just too what you said too, that you're like tricking your mind in acting like you're still broke, and like you're back in 1987, because that's hard to do when you have some success. And I meet some entrepreneurs that have made some money. Life is good. They got some safe money. They got some investment money. Their business is flowing, and it's really easy to get comfortable. And it's also, after you've been doing it for a while and you finally get there, because that's like the ultimate place to get to. It's hard to like stay motivated and keep going. And I definitely try and, I put myself back in that place of, when I first got started and having my house on the line, credit card debt. I started my company with credit cards, and I had some money that I saved up. But I mean, it was all my money. And I went from some money in the bank, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a lot of money, and no credit card debt, to a lot of credit card debt and no money very quickly, and almost losing my house. And in those situations, either I could have threw the towel in, which I would have never forgave myself, but I just grinded it harder and was relentless because of it. And then for a long time, even when things were good, I just kept being relentless. But it's important.
I think being relentless is underrated. Being resilient and relentless is underrated. But like, listen, trying to bang through, sometimes your idea does suck. I mean, do not be SOS, stuck on stupid. I would say dream big, sample small, and fail quick. Like, it's okay to, it's okay. I mean, sometimes your idea just didn't work. There's always a lesson or a blessing from whatever mistake you make. But, I'm a big fan of like my advice to myself, to remind myself, because I can go raise all kinds of money, whatever. I don't want to do it. I want to go right back to 87. Now, I couldn't start the company with $4,000 like I did with Steiner, but I started with a very small amount of money, one investor. I don't want a lot of debt. I don't want to owe a lot of people. That's why I ran the first 8-9 years at Steiner. No debt, didn't owe a lot of people money. And I always tell entrepreneurs, just take in a little bit more than you spend. Because cash flow is huge. Profit matters, but cash flow matters too. And you see these new tech companies, they don't think that cash flow matters. They lose all kinds of money, and they think they keep raising money. I'm just not a fan of it. I'm a fan of, if you can break even, make a little bit of money, keep your cash flow positive, prove your concept, then go get the money.
Yeah.
Then you got a head start. Then you got then you got the ground underneath your feet, and it's just a lot more comfortable. Taking people's money and failing is misery. Like, I'm not a fan of it. Like, oh, well, we tried. I'm like, nah, that's not good. Yeah. But that's just me. Make a little more in than you spend, just a little bit.
And trying, like, did you work till 1 o'clock in the morning and back at it at 7 a.m. or tried, with other people's money, you work 9 to 5 or 6 p.m.
Because the game just gets started once you get the money.
Yeah.
Because, we raised all this money. I'm like, what are you celebrating about?
Yeah.
You didn't do anything. Now you got a real responsibility. It's like you have kids. It's like having kids. To me, like getting investors, like having children. You have complete accountability, responsibility, and your job now is to not only make money and make them money, and make sure that happens, because that's why people invested in you. That's your reputation, your legacy. And I think sometimes you see these tech companies celebrate because they did this big money raise, and they spend galore. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure how that all got twisted.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, and that's why I think a lot of them failed, because they got the money and they thought that, that was the win. Money, it'll all figure itself out. But that, you still have to do the hard work and stick to the basic business fundamentals. And
I walk around this office and shut the lights off. I make sure the air conditioning shut off at the end of the day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do I have to do that? But that's that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
I have to do that anymore, but I do it because if I'm not living if you're not really waking up broke and living like you're a little broke to keep you really hungry, being really, really nimble about your money. That's the message I want my employees to know. Like, everything matters. And before you know it, stick around long enough, we're going to make that one big sale, that one big opportunity. It's going to
Nice.
pop up before you know it. And it has, like it has for me. I mean, I'm definitely getting the comeback of the year award, but I'm about to go to my 4th year. And I said right at the beginning, I said, these first couple of years are going to be really hard. And I think the 3rd year, things will turn around. And this 4th year, it's almost like God heard me. And I do believe, enthusiasm. We talked about curiosity, but enthusiasm, the word enthusiasm, by the way, comes from the word enthusios, and that means with God. So when you approach your business with enthusiasm, with God, with faith, and I'm not a highly spiritual religious person, but I do believe in spirituality and faith. And faith is like, believing in something you can't see. To talk about something when you have nothing, and you start to say, listen, year 4, it's going to pop.
Yeah.
Sure is. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
year 4 starts and boom, boom. Like, it was almost like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And then, that big sale is right, like, all of a sudden now looming. And it just happens like that. Like, if you can keep your faith, keep your enthusiasm and your curiosity up to a high level, and then wake up broke. Those are some good ingredients. Realize you're probably not going to hit the lottery year 1 or 2. You got to figure out, but year 3 and 4, things should start popping, or your SOS, maybe stuck on stupid.
Yeah. And year 3 or 4, it's happening because you've been there, done it. You've been through the rodeo. And I think, for me, when I first got started, it didn't really start. It was like year 5, year 6, and like really year 7, and year 6, I was like, shit, is all this worth it? Like, what the hell am I doing? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it all I got. I'm going to give it all I got this year. And then sure enough, and I guess that was that enthusiasm, year 7, it really came together. And that's where we
year
had some
4
real
gives
growth.
you the opportunity to keep going to year 7, because year 3, you're wondering, like,
What
this
am I
may not
doing?
work. Like, I may be down a completely wrong path. And 4 things start shaping up, which gives you a right to keep going to 6, 7, and 8. Which with me, it was year 8. That's when I really hit it, by the way, in Steiner. So like year 4 now is giving me the confidence that I've got something. There's some ground underneath my feet that I'm not worried about. Any minute I'm going to cave in and drown. Which is sometimes when you're losing and things are not working, you feel that way,
100%. Yeah, I it's crazy how long it takes. When I left my job and started the company, I thought, all right, the end of year 1, like I thought I was going to be killing it, and I got killed. It was
you need to have a plan, I think, for a few years where not only it's the funding, but you need your personal funding. I was lucky. My wife was a CPA. She was making a good living, and she was pretty much supporting us for the first 4 or 5 years. So I didn't have that pressure of coming home with not making a lot of money. A lot of guys have that problem. I didn't have that problem. Like, I knew my wife was really smart and a lot smarter than me, frankly. So I was okay. She's like, listen, you're going to try it. Now's the time. I got us covered. Go play in traffic. Go see if you can figure this out. And, I would never have been able to do it without her support. So having that person that's behind you, that believes in you, that got your back, well, hey,
it makes a big difference.
It
makes a huge difference. And it's funny. I mean, I didn't have that. And, I think I completely miscalculated what my personal expenses and the business expenses. And I think a lot of people, a lot of people do that. Was definitely a wild time. But, take us back to that time, 1987, $4,000, like, did you have this idea? Like, was there like sports, like big sports memorabilia company back then? Like there was people just trading stuff, like, like individual, like what was it back then? And
what I would say is, first of all, I didn't want to be in the memorabilia business. I was a sports marketer and I was marketing players. And that's, back in '87, not a lot of people were doing that. So I was doing hundreds of appearances the first few years, not making a lot of money because players didn't make a lot back then in the early '90s. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to market players, and it was very questionable how well that was working out for me. But I always say your first idea is not your best idea. And a lot of people abandon their idea or they stop. and they stop at success, or they stop at a little bit of a bump on the road and puts them on the side of the road. And for me, like, I remember going home and telling my wife that, I don't know if this is going to work. She's like, maybe you should go get a job. Maybe you try this. I'm in year like 5 now, 4 or 5, and things are still a little wobbly. And it leads me to the fact to say, look, I do all these appearances. Maybe I need to start bringing memorabilia to these appearances. So when I started that concept, it was to really help the corporate appearances I was doing, a raffle, a giveaway to their clients, that sort of thing. And then I'd have players sign a bunch of stuff. And the companies would never question how much I charged them to get the blank helmets, the footballs, the photos. And that's how I took kind of what was a very modest percentage. You book somebody for $5,000, you make $1,000. You book somebody for $10,000, you make $2,000. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And then you're traveling with a player to do it. But then all of a sudden you're bringing them $2,000-$3,000 of memorabilia, and you're making $1,500 on the $3,000. That started popping. So I went to the bank. I took out $10,000 out of the bank, which my wife was like, if you take out a dime more than that, I'll kill you. Because she was not like, well, what's memorabilia? Who's going to buy that? Nobody's buying a signed ball. I think I'd have Mickey Mantle sign 1,000 balls. Say, if you go and touch our bank account, I'll kill you. Like, nobody's going to buy a Mickey Mantle signed ball.
Wow.
So I had a good relationship with Mickey. So
yeah.
I didn't take out the $25,000. It was $25 an autograph at the time. And, I think that a lot of times people misunderstand that entrepreneurism, yes, it's about coming up with a new idea, understanding a market and finding the white space. But the risk that's involved, I think people understand that's what takes people out of it, because it is risky, but also the leadership involved, the ability to go sell people in on an idea that they can't see. Sell them in an idea they have no idea what you're talking about. I would come home, nobody understood what the hell I was talking about. Guy's gonna sign a ball, you're gonna sell it. I mean, how's that gonna even work? That's kind of where we're at. And the business, if anything, the business had a bunch of fraudulent stuff in it. So when I built Steiner, it was like very wobbly, and my mind was all over the place about things I thought we could do. But the most important thing I think that I really did is the P word, partners. I think that collaboration with the right partners, something that can expand the roof over your head. Hopefully when you get married, that partner expands the roof over your head, makes you a better person, and makes your life bigger than what you had in any way you talk about. So, partnering up with Mickey Mantles, partnering up with the Yankees, partnering up with Jeter, Messier, Eli Manning, those partnerships were very strategic, and it made people feel like I was bigger than what I really was. And that's kind of how I played to get Steiner to another level, was using the partnerships, because I had no money to really do it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, and really, and really well said. I mean, how did those partnerships, come about? Like what, like with Mickey Mantle, were you doing, in that business prior to, or, how'd that get started?
I think that, one of the things that people don't talk a lot about in entrepreneurship and in general, when you're trying to build new relationships, is value. Most people think about, oh, wow, what can I get out of this podcast? Oh, wow, what can I get out of meeting this celebrity? What value can I get out of meeting this rich person? And I think about value is what you can do for someone that they can't do for themselves. So immediately when I meet a Jeter, or I meet even the Yankees, I'm like, immediately my thought is, what can I do for them? What can I do for them that they can't do? And maybe I can provide that value. And if I do that well, they'll probably want to do some business with me.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to put that out. And believe me, there are times when I've done some things for people, and there hasn't been anything there's no reciprocation. But that's your mind either works or doesn't work. So for me, I've been doing that since I'm 12 years old. The value proposition of what you can do for someone that they can't do for themselves, and making sure you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Because people talk about entrepreneurism, it's a really sexy word, but really entrepreneurism on the highest level, besides the risk, leadership, and understanding the market and trying to find the white space, but it really comes down to common sense. If you can have a high level of common sense, you could be a great entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, if you could put someone else's shoes and get out of your head, not worry about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, but try to understand what someone else is thinking and feeling, and what you can provide for them to think and feel better. And I've been doing that since I'm 12 years old. And like, what I tell people is, I'm not the smartest guy, but my common sense is really, really high. My son always says, Dad, you're not that smart. I'm smarter than you. I'm like, you're 13 years old. He goes, but your common sense is really unbelievable. I got to give you that. And, you know, we and he was probably right. My kid's a really smart kid, but, you know, common sense is so underrated because it leads you to entrepreneurism. It's your ability to put yourself in a common person's shoes.
Yeah.
And when you can do that and get out of your head and really think about what it's like to be a person that doesn't have a lot of money, or a person that's getting old, or a person that's got 8 kids, when you put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of understand what they need, and then you come up with a solution for it. My mother always said, you got to be a solution-based business person. It's another way of saying it. So I always feel like if you want to be a great entrepreneur, turn up your common sense, turn up your empathy.
100%. It's so funny because the common sense thing, I mean, it's really everything. And you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You don't have to have the Harvard background. If you have the common sense and the willingness to work, and it's constant problem solving, you know, I mean, you're solving problems. And I really love what you said about it's, you know, like, you know, seeing things that other people aren't seeing, you know, and I think I'm really glad that you said that, because sometimes you think of these new ideas in an entrepreneur and other people can't see them. And then you maybe can get frustrated. You don't want to execute on them because you think like you're crazy, you know? And I think that those are probably some of the best ideas.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes they're the simplest ones that no one's thinking about.
I'm reading my kid a story. He's 3 years old, 4 years old. I'm reading him a book, which I hate doing, but I'm not a big reader. Even though I've written 3 books, you know, I had a little problem reading, but I'm reading him a story. And usually when I go in to read my kids a story, I made up the story. I never read it. And sometimes they like that, sometimes they didn't. So I'm telling my kid a story at this point, and like literally 2 minutes in, he's dead asleep. And I'm like, can you believe this? And there's a picture of Mark Messier holding the cup, and I'm telling him why that's my favorite moment is when the Rangers won the cup in '94. It's kind of similar in modern day to the Cubs winning, the Red Sox breaking the curse. It was very similar, you know, like an amazing 54 years waiting. I was a big Ranger fan, and I'm telling him the story about how important that moment is for me. And this is at the beginning of my collectible company when I started. And I realized when my kid's dead asleep, but I keep telling myself the story. And when I finished telling myself that story, even though he's dead asleep, I know that sounds weird, but it's true. And I'm thinking, wow, like that's a really important moment for me. And memorabilia is moments that matter.
Yeah.
So I go like, if that moment is that important to me, I bet you every sports fan has 1 or 2 of those moments. Now, as a kid that had trouble reading, had a learning disability, I had thousands of magazines in my company. I used to save Life's, Sports Illustrated, Times, everything, because I'd look through the pictures mostly, and you know, so I read everything. I go into my warehouse the next day, and I start going through every magazine to find a special moment. And my first theme at Steiner that took us and really put us on the map was remember the moment.
Wow.
And it was a whole series of photos that I then found the photos, then found the athletes to sign those photos with a little inscription that talked about the moment.
Wow.
Because at that time, people were just signing anything. They weren't
paying
attention. Except I really went and said, no, don't sign anything. Find a really magical moment, which most of the time happened in a photo, or I'd look at the photo and I'd see something that the player was wearing in that photo, or a bat that they used, or a stick. And I go to the company, I recreate the stick and that. I recreate the jersey.
Wow.
And that's how I kicked off really Steiner Collectibles. And that's how I live by my memorabilia company now, even, is trying to find moments of time that matter. So the moral of the story is read your kid a story before they go to bed. It's always a good thing. But it's amazing what could lead you, you know, to when you really think about, if you can get outside of your head a little bit and start thinking about things as a common person would think. Because I'm thinking everybody's got this moment, this game they were at, this story where they were. Think about it. If you can get outside your head in your business and think about that way, you'd be surprised how your entrepreneur skills will improve.
I love that. Really, really well said. And everything you've been saying is super inspirational. You know, Brandon, you're on a roll today.
Yeah. You know, I try to articulate it because I want people to understand that it's not that easy, but it's also not that hard. And I try to put it in terms where, you know, people can, and I'm still growing myself. You know, I'm using these tools as I'm building my new company up. So I'm not like talking out of both sides of my mouth, and it works.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I love that, signing a baseball wasn't a thing. Like I just grew up thinking like there was this sports memorabilia and it was always like that. And that,
No,
that
no.
you pulled this idea out
The
of
big
thin air.
breakthrough was my mother-in-law would come over and she'd say, "What do you do again? You sign the guy really signs the ball." But the breakthrough was my mother-in-law was older, and she goes to a doctor, and the doctor, her regular doctor, says, "Your son-in-law, is that Steiner? Do you think you can get me a baseball signed by such a player? My son's a big fan." So my mother-in-law comes over and says, "You can get, of course I gave you that baseball." And after that, she was my biggest fan. She got it.
That's great. Yeah.
I
Up
was
until
thinking
then,
I
she was
could
like,
get
I
that
don't know
baseball. Yeah,
if
yeah.
my daughter should have married him. That's great. That's awesome. What a great story. Really good
That's how it
stuff.
all picked up. Yeah.
So what's next for you? I mean, it seems like you're really focused on, the exchange, you know,
I mean,
um,
we have a new authentication we're about to launch soon, which I think is really important and incorporates a digital component along with the physical. I'm digging a little deeper on the trading cards. I'm looking to buy a couple companies now. Now that I got my wits about me, I think the most fun part about what next for me is what I don't know. Um, I've done more things that I've never tried before. I've gotten into the real estate business. I've invested in a bank. I invested in a radio station. I invested in a festival. Trying to like diversify. So I've tried different things, and it takes me to different places. And I like it. I'm continuing to do things with people that I like and respect. I don't invest just for the sake of it. But if I like you and I really understand what you're doing, and I could get on the journey with you and kind of enjoy it, whether there's a big return or not isn't as important as whether I trust you, like you, and whether I think the journey is worth going on with you. And I think that people misunderstand that when it's confusing and you're kind of a little shaky. Why do I want to go on that journey? So what's next for
yeah,
me is the unknown. It's like every day I'm opened up. I've made sure that I didn't like lock myself into one thing. I've kind of open minded to different things that I can try. And what's really next for me is the learning part on the tech part is really making sure that on the social media and on the marketplace is a lot more than just putting a website together. It's a lot more complex to really make it effective. So I'm in constant learning mode there with the young kids, showing me how that works and how we can improve that so people can buy and sell on the collectible exchange.
it's great. Well, I definitely can't wait to buy and sell some stuff on there myself.
Thank you.
And as we wrap up here, we always end with a growth tip that you'd share with fellow entrepreneurs. What's a growth tip that you would share to others watching the show?
I think it's really important. I see a lot of young entrepreneurs in a hurry to start their own thing. And I've been an entrepreneur since I'm literally 11 years old. So I was on the streets hustling. And when I graduated college, which that was a whole feat in itself to me to go to school, and get an accounting degree was unbelievable. And I told my mother, I was like ready to open up a business. But she's like, "You don't open up a business." And I tell people all the time, be patient. Go work in a couple industries, as good a quality of companies you can work for. I think who you work for, especially when you're younger, really counts and matters, not the money, but working for a really high quality person and a high quality company and learning how money gets made. Because not all business is good business and not all money is good money.
Yeah,
Learning how to make good money in a smart way from really good people, that's it. That's like almost like as an infant who raises you. When you're a teenager, young in your 20s, those first few people you work for is like the person who raises you in the business world, and those characteristics are critical. And I would say don't get caught up in the money, get caught up in what you can learn and what you can grow. And that's the only part I believe in as far as building a resume.
that's great. Really well said. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on the show today. I really appreciate and respect your time. I loved, all the stories and really, you got me fired up and motivated. And I really appreciate your
Well, the one thing
motivation.
I would say is, for everybody out there, everybody tells you could be anything. If you put your mind to it, you could be anything. That is not true. It's
Yes.
not. But there's a lot of things you can be, and the goal is to go find that great thing that you were meant to be. And unfortunately, there's just a few things that more than likely you just can't. It's not ever going to happen. If you want to try it, no problem. But realize it's like winning a lottery ticket. But there's so many things you can do when you work hard, prepare, high level of enthusiasm, high level of curiosity.
That's exactly right. And for sure, I am not going to be an NBA player, so I'm going to stay focused on doing, what I'm doing. And I think to follow up with that statement, whatever it is that you want to do, if you want to be successful at it, you're going to have to work hard and be relentless, stay curious, stay humble. And I think we covered a lot of great stuff around that today. So
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And by the way, my book's free for all your listeners. If you go to Collectible Exchange, pick up one of my 3 books. My pleasure. It's that time of year where you're on the beach, which, that's okay. Get a little tan, but learn a little something while you're sitting there. Pick up one of my books. You won't go wrong. It's easy. Go to Collectible Exchange, click on the book. Boom.
Good stuff. We'll definitely go there. Get Brandon's book. Thanks for being on the show today, and really excited to go purchase something on a Collectibles Exchange. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Brandon. Keep
Have a
growing.
great day. Thanks for having me.
Be well. Talk soon.